2 weeks ago, I shared a video about the idea of being prepared to handle angry pro-choicers or post-abortive parents. And I got a lot of great responses, and thank you guys so much for watching it. I felt like that was one of the most important videos I had made. Over the 7 days after that, it was almost as if God was going, let's see you put your money where your mouth is. Because every day, all day long, it's been angry, rabid pro-lifers, pro-choicers, post-abortive people, abortion workers on Facebook. Just a non-stop barrage. I have not spent this much time arguing, debating with people on Facebook since the whole AHA is anti-Catholic blow-up. And for those of you who remember that time, you understand what it's been like for me. And in that process, a young lady, an abolitionist, asked my wife and I to join her on a thread because she was having a hard time talking to a Christian who thought that it was evil and self-righteous and sinful to tell people when they're sinning, and who believed that it was perfectly acceptable to murder rape-conceived children. Now, obviously, you and I both know how ludicrous that idea is. But she was really having a hard time getting him to understand things, and so she asked us to come in. Over the course of the time, another gentleman came in who had nearly identical beliefs. He didn't believe in the rape exception, but he did believe that we were these evil people and that I was a horrible person for telling this young man when he was in sin and what his sin was. Through the course of a 3-day-long thread, I received a private message from her. And she said something that somebody had told me once before, and it just it struck me. She said, "I don't know how you do this. I would have blown up by now. You're so patient." The funny thing is people who know me personally know that I'm really not all that patient of a person. I ordered some drop cards last week, and UPS decided, due to the freezing cold weather that we had, that they weren't going to deliver them the day that my tracker said they were going to deliver them. I was fuming, because I'm not a patient man. I'm very impatient. In fact, it's something that I've had to work on many times. It's an issue of pride in myself. However, when it comes to things like debating a pro-choicer or talking to women outside of the clinic, I do have this tendency to show a lot of patience. And so she kind of asked me a little bit of how I do that. And I wanted to impart a few pieces of wisdom here. And the first off is the way I see it in this type of situation, there's one of two people. The first group of people is very similar to my pastor. You see, my pastor had tried starting up a few debates on Facebook and just ended up stopping. Me and him have talked about it many times over, and he loves to watch me and watch some of the other abolitionists debating on Facebook, but he doesn't have the patience for it. He doesn't like the format, he doesn't like the way that emotions come across, and he just gets impatient with the idea of debating on Facebook. And so if that is you, if you're the type of person that you want to debate people, you want to talk to people, you want to evangelize, but you can't do so in the medium of social media, then I want to encourage you to follow after the way that my pastor has followed. He still debates people in person. In fact, he has actual professional debates. He still preaches the gospel. He still goes out and evangelizes. But he doesn't do so in a medium that just plain doesn't fit for his personality. And if that is you, then don't have those debates. Feel free to let somebody else come in and make a debate case. There are a lot of jokes going on around Facebook about abolitionists being keyboard warriors, and we have personally gone ahead and played some games with the idea of being keyboard warriors. However, being a keyboard warrior is not necessary to the work of abolition. I keep finding out about people who are doing awesome things to push forward the gospel and to push forward the message of abolition, and I've never seen them on Facebook. Because that's not a medium that works well for them. It's not a medium that they can work in. And there's nowhere in Scripture that says, preach the gospel on Facebook. Now, if you're using Facebook regularly, by all means, you should be doing these things. But it's not mandatory that you get involved in these major debates and that you get involved in these, 400, 500, 600 comment-long threads. I saw a thread the other day that was over 2,000 comments. So, if you're that first group of people, that's all my advice to you. Just don't do it. The second group of people is people like myself. You see Tim Lockley or Russell Hunter. You see Toby Harmon. You see us up there, and we're nonstop on Facebook. It's always debating. I'm looking at 5 to 10 in-depth conversations revolving religion and abolition every single day. And if that's you, there's some things that I would say you want to take a look at, some things that you want to do and put into practice, so that the same patience, the same grace, and the same love that we're commanded to show, you're able to do so in a medium that can sometimes be a little bit difficult. The very first piece of advice that I want to give is not to be afraid to tag somebody in. You see, this young lady, one of the best decisions she could have made was to say, hey, I know somebody who can answer these questions better than I do. I know somebody who's better at conveying information over Facebook than I am. So I'm going to tag them in. Don't ever be afraid to do that. Don't ever think that it makes you look weaker. Don't ever think that it makes you look less intelligent. To the contrary, it makes you look more wise. Maybe not in the eyes of some fool or some unbeliever or some pro-abort, but it makes you look wise in the eyes of anybody who has wisdom. Because wisdom is saying, I don't have an answer. But he does. She does. That's wisdom right there, is being able to look to the people who can answer questions better, or who can debate stronger, or who can tolerate people better than you can. So first and foremost, don't be afraid to tag people in. Second off is being prepared. Now, I'm going to cover this subject next week a little bit more extensively. In fact, a lot more extensively. But just in a short run, be prepared for these conversations. I remember when I was a pro-lifer, and I was out with the pro-life movement, and I'd get stuck in these situations where I had no answer. And of course, being that my motivation had nothing to do with God, my faith was worthless to me, the first thing I would do is make something up. I taught people, make something up. See, that's wrong though. Instead of making something up, we should be prepared, study up ahead of time, know what your arguments are going to be before you get into them, things of that nature. And again, we're going to cover that next week, so I greatly encourage you to watch that video. Now, quick list of things here. We have love. One of the greatest commandments was love. Love your neighbor and love your God. So when you're debating with a pro-choicer, remember that they are made in the image of God, and that Jesus himself commanded you to love your enemy. Because even the unbeliever, even the fool, even the unrighteous and the wicked, they love their friends. But love your enemy. And so always have that in the forefront, that love, the love of Christ, and allow it to shine through you. Also think about what Jesus would do. I've done this twice now in one of these videos, and it's almost comical to me, but what would Jesus do? Now, yes, there is the option. There was a time when Jesus went and he turned over tables and he whipped people and he chased people out of the temple. Any good gospel preacher, any abolitionist who's been out there is going to tell you that there comes a time when sometimes, maybe not whipping people and throwing tables around, but coming in from an aggressive approach is necessary. But at the same time, when people came up to Christ violently, when they came angrily, when they came with hatred and spite, he responded with love, gentleness, compassion, and kindness. So always remember that you are a representative of the living God, the one true King, Remember that you are his image here on earth. Not only in that you are endowed with his image, but that when people look at you, they're envisioning you as the representative of Christ. You are an ambassador. And so remember that you are representing him. Behave like him. If you don't know how to act like Jesus, then before you get on Facebook tomorrow, before you go out to the clinic, before you go agitate out on a street corner, before you try and preach the gospel to somebody, I recommend 4 books for you. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read them twice. You can read all 4 of those in one day. Read through them, because that is how Jesus acted. So if you've read them, you know. If you don't know, go ahead and read them. The third thing is to remember that you were once like them. Now maybe you were never a pro-abort. I have never in my life endorsed abortion. I was a pro-lifer from birth on. But I was wicked. I was sinful. I was filthy in the eyes of God. I once was a Christian who thought that I could get high and sleep around. Christian. I once was a Christian who thought that having a porn addiction on the side of my marriage, it was completely acceptable. So remember that at one point in our lives, each and every one of us were them. We were on the other side of the fence. We were on the other side of the table. And so when you're looking at them, and sometimes you want to get mad. When I hear somebody tell me that to call out sin in another human being's life is wicked and self-righteous, I get mad. Because that offends my God, which means that it offends me. But at the same time, I once did things that were so offensive to God, I don't want to remember them. And so I have to remember, I have to keep at the very front of my mind that they're no different than I once was. And that God redeemed me, and he can redeem them. So I always have to treat them as if there is still a hope. Because until the day they die, there is. So at the end of the day, we want to be prepared. We want to show the love of Christ. We want to act like Jesus did. And we want to have that empathy that comes from knowing that we were once in that position. And again, if you cannot do these things, if you can't sit on Facebook and have a debate with somebody, then don't do it. If you can't keep your temper in check, then sit down and get in your word. Get on your knees and cry out to God and say, Lord, give me patience. Because patience is a virtue. Lord, give me compassion. Lord, give me empathy. Give me sympathy. Whatever it is that you're lacking in your life that is not allowing you to have these conversations, cry out to God, because those are gifts from him that he desires to give to you. And if you don't know what those are, open up your word. The more you dig into your word, you're going to say, man, that's what's wrong with me. And I'm not saying something's wrong with you, but hey, we all do it. We've all done it at one point. He's going, duh, I can't believe I was doing that. So when we go out, when we hit the streets, when we're at the abortion clinic, when we're on Facebook, we want to be able to show patience, love, kindness, goodness, and compassion. Because the reason we are abolitionists is because Christ showed those to us through another man or another woman. And we would be irresponsible, I would dare say we would be in sin, if we were not willing to show those same graces to the pro-abort, to the apathetic Christian, to the abortive mother, or just to the rabid pro-lifer who hates abolition. So when we're out there, remember patience, love, mercy, and kindness. With these things we cannot fail. With these things we will see the culture around us start to change. We will see hearts start to soften. We will see minds be transformed. And we will see the abolition of human abortion.